I just come off a call with a client that we worked together for, I think, almost 2 years now. She's on the third round with me because she was really, really, really burned out when we first started, to the point that she had to take sick leave for a long time. So we managed to get back to neutral, and now she's building her life and trying to find out exactly what she wants within VetMed. So she's got her own business now, doing home visits, and she is really happy, but obviously still experiencing and finding her feet to how often does she want to work, how much, and so on and so on. There's so much to decide right now that she's back in the saddle and in control. And today what came up was her brain just keeps telling her that she's not doing enough, she's not working enough, which obviously then translates into her taking on many more clients than she originally intended, because she wanted to have more time off her family. She's got a little daughter, and somehow she feels like the work there's so much work out there that she just has to keep going because otherwise she's not doing enough. And when you really think about it, when you have your own business as a vet, like whether it's small animal horses, whatever you're doing, farm animals, it's you could actually work 24 hours, 7 days a week, because there's enough work. And if you're good enough and you have a good reputation, and the mouth to mouth starts working, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to request your services. So what is enough then? Is enough then working 40 hours a week, 50 hours, 100 hours a week? Like, who defines what enough is? And I think as an entrepreneur myself, I definitely know that trap of always thinking that I'm not doing enough. And to the point that when I'm then sitting at home, and this is what happened to my client as well, is we then don't, if we're not working, then we have to be doing something. So like cooking, cleaning, doing the gardening, we'll have to or be playing with the kids. Or if we're reading a book, it has to be something that is teaching us something. And I think a lot of us fall into this trap where we just keep having to produce something. No, we have to prove that we're worthy, that we are doing enough, quote unquote, to the point that sometimes enough is just when you're so tired that you literally cannot keep going, or your partner, gets hold of you and says okay, let's do something together now. And this happens in the clinic as well. In the clinic, we can feel that we are not doing enough. We can feel that we're not doing enough for the patient. If we're not doing enough for the patient, it could translate into the patient not recovering, or maybe it ends up in a euthanasia, or maybe we thought this patient could benefit from a euthanasia, but we quote unquote didn't do enough to quote unquote convince the pet parents, and they didn't want the euthanasia, and then we feel we didn't do enough for our patient. Or maybe we feel we don't do enough for the owners. There's a lot of people maybe asking favors of us, or asking advice, or asking that we do X, Y, Z, and we just don't have the time to maybe make an appointment for them or to do what they want, and we're not doing enough for them. Sometimes we feel that we're not doing enough for our co-workers because maybe we try to leave on time and there's still a lot of work to do that you have to leave behind because you're leaving, and then you feel you're not doing enough for your co-workers. So this thought and this general feeling of not doing enough, not being enough, not working enough is something that will show up no matter where you are in life. And I think being an entrepreneur, or just being a vet in general, or even just being a mom, there will always be a certain extent of our brain telling us we're not doing enough. And it's really, really important to catch it when it happens, because otherwise you are going to be spiraling out and signing up for more and more things, doing more things, because you want to fill your time out so you can actually never physically sit down and do nothing, which I've talked about before. Especially women, we are conditioned to just keep doing. And it seems like really selfish to sit down and maybe just read a book for yourself, maybe a book that doesn't even teach you anything, so you can be even better, right? So it's really important to define with our rational brain what enough is. Like, what is enough? Instead of just saying, oh, you didn't do enough, or you're not doing enough, or you are not enough, that's very vague, right? If I say to you, you're not running fast enough, it'll be something enough for something specific, like you're not running fast enough to outrun that lion, or you're not running fast enough to break that record, or you're not running fast enough to get to the finish line before the run is over. What is it enough for? So in other contexts, it's easier to see enough for what, right? But when we're saying we're not doing enough, or we're not working enough, we tend to not have a specific limit. There's no structure to it. It's just enough. Like when it feels like we've done enough, what is that even? And if you do that, then it's going to be always trying to catch the carrot on the stick. The more the move, the faster you move, the carrot is just going to keep moving. You're never going to get there. You're never going to be doing enough. Hence, you're never going to feel enough because you actually never reach that limit unless you're so exhausted that you fall asleep watching a film, in which case you're like, okay, I did enough because I exhausted myself. So, first of all, if you have this feeling a lot, and it will translate into, you will notice that you're probably got under in your stomach. You'll probably notice that you're breathing very up here. You're not breathing down in your stomach. You're breathing up in your upper chest, in your throat. You notice maybe a tension in your throat and your chest. You know tension in your shoulders, in your neck. Maybe you'll maybe get like slight headache. Those are typical symptoms, but they could show differently for you because we all feel different ways, right? But that would be a symptom. And then if you like feel like if you say no to someone, if you say no to a job, or you're saying no to an extra shift or whatever it is, and you feel like that anxiety taking over, your heart is beating faster, you feel more tense, you feel like your throat is closing up, and you feel really bad for saying no because you not think you're doing enough, that will be a sign that your primitive brain is trying to push you to do more when maybe your intention wasn't actually to do more. So what is enough? What is enough? If you are deciding your own hours, what is enough then? Is enough working 40 hours? Is enough working 20 hours? What is it, what you want with your life? And here it's really important to go back to the episode where I talked about what success is. So what is success for you? Is it working yourself into the ground and be the best vet in the world and never say no to anybody and earn a ton of money and have a really good reputation? That would be one extreme. Or is it working not very much, maybe 1 or 2 days a week, and then have a lot of hobbies, have a lot of maybe some side hustles, having time for your family? You know, what is it for you that defines your life as a success? Define that you are doing exactly what you want to do, not just whatever you kind of fell into and just kept tumbling along, right? So define for you what your week, your day would look like to be successful. And then you will have to decide that that is enough because that is something you decide. You're the captain of your ship, right? So do you want to sail to Caribbean or do you just want to sail across the whatever, to Copenhagen? What is it you want to do? And then you're going to have to try, whenever your brain then tries to gaslight you and tell you you're not doing enough, then remember, no, I sat down and I wrote down what success was for me and how much I wanted to work. And this is my plan and I'm going to adhere to it. So if I'm an entrepreneur, I only want to work, say, 3 days a week, then these are the 3 days I allocated for it. And these are the hours I allocated for it as well. And then anything else, it's a no, because that's it for me. If you're working in the clinic and you have a constant feeling of that you're not doing enough, then you definitely need to question that as well, because that could also spin you into never feel that you're doing enough, which means that you will have a constant, just a subdued level of anxiety. It's just going to be always there, an undercurrent of it. You are going to be very stressed. You are very likely to end up burned out. You're going to feel that everybody are asking too much of you, because if you finally feel you somehow have done enough and now somebody else asks something of you, your brain will be like, oh yeah, no, we haven't done enough. We need to do more, which is going to make it very difficult for you to set healthy boundaries that are going to allow you to leave on time and lead a life that you want to lead. So if we break it down in the clinic and say that you have that constant feeling you're not doing enough for your patients, then you want to evaluate that. You want to look at it and you want to be very neutral, because enough is just, that is not a number. You cannot say, I didn't do enough for the patient. You'll have to say, I did X, Y, and Z. I would have liked to do this and the other as well. This is the reason why I didn't do it. So there wasn't enough time. The owners didn't have the funds for it. I was busy with another case that took priority. You need to say exactly what happened. Be very neutral. Be very factual, as if you had to explain it in the court what happened. And be very honest with yourself, because our brain will often basically bullshit and us and tell us, oh, you didn't do enough, when you have literally been doing like CPR on this patient for 20 minutes and you're giving it all the drugs and there wasn't any money for it anyway, and your brain will still be like, you didn't do enough, that's why it died. No, you need to be very factual about it and write down everything you did right. You want to write down what maybe didn't go so well. Like I teach in my 3-step evaluation process, what didn't go so well? What would you maybe do differently? Why didn't you do it differently this time? What would you do differently next time? No, and because then you have like a structure, you have an exact kind of container where you can put this not enoughness and like actually evaluate it instead of just having this constantly undercurrent of feeling of not doing enough. If you feel you're not doing enough at work, as in for your workplace, for your co-workers, then you need to look at that as well. So if you're feeling you're always leaving your co-workers doing more than you, or you're never finishing what you want to do, so they always have to pick up after you, or you feel like you chose a flex job, so you're working less hours than them, and then you feel you're not doing enough, then you want to look at, well, these exactly are the conditions I work under. This is my contract. These are the hours I work. This is my job description. And this is what I do when I'm at work. And then challenge your brain when your brain is like, you're not doing enough. Okay, so what would enough be here? Would that be me having a contract to be on flex time, but work full time, but just not get paid for it? Or what? Or would it mean that I have to tie a bow on all the cases, before I can leave? This is something I actually see when I take a handover at night, that sometimes the day vets will have had a case that they either maybe admitted earlier and then didn't really have time to finish looking at because it wasn't that urgent, or maybe they have just admitted something maybe half an hour earlier and they have not finished doing all the tests, the full estimate with the client because they just haven't had time, or literally the patient has just been admitted, or they have started the test, but they have not actually finished diagnosing, tying a bow, and giving me a treatment plan. And of course, if the patient was admitted at 9 o'clock in the morning and they're not done anything with it all day and they're not really been doing anything, I might get a bit annoyed. I'll be like, oh, listen, this poor dog has been sitting here without, fluids or treatment, anything. But that is normally not the case. Normally it's been admitted late afternoon or just before a shift, and they have done some things with it, but they haven't finished, so they haven't been able to speak to the owners and give them an exact plan. And those vets will often say to me, I'm so sorry, like I'm handing you the case like this and I'm leaving you with this. And I'm like, but that's why we have the handover. So, you don't have to tie everything in a bow, because a lot of cases will never be tied up in a bow, and a lot of cases will take hours or days to work up. So it makes no sense that you want to give me this as a nice little, presentable gift, because often vet med is just messy. And of course, you're going to leave this mess because you got to go now. It's already half an hour you should have gone and you're still here. So don't stay and try and finish off. So I try to tell them, just go. What can I do to make sure you can go on time? And try and kick them out, because I don't want them to work more hours than necessary because they want to help me out, because I can cope. I'll just get the shit done. I've been doing this for so many years and I just know it's going to get done, unless we have two patients at the same time that we have to do CPR on. Okay, then maybe can you stay a bit longer just to get this finished? No, but literally at anything apart from that, it doesn't need to get done at a moment. So if you're that type of person that you want to leave everything tied up in a bow, or people ask of you to leave everything tied up in a bow before you leave, then you have to challenge that. You have to challenge your brain, and you have to challenge them, saying, look, I'm leaving at this time. I've done all the steps up to 7 o'clock, and now you take over, and here's the plan, right? Obviously, depending on what it says in your contract or what agreement we have with your co-workers. But don't put that pressure on you that you have to leave everything 100% closed and wrapped up in order for you to do enough. That is a very dangerous place to be in, because in a lot of clinics, that's just not going to be possible. So, and also doing enough for the owners, right? So if the owners are claiming a lot from you and you don't feel you're doing enough, be careful that your brain is not leading you down the road of enough is when everybody's happy with me, because that road is just going to take you nowhere, because everybody are never going to be happy with you at all times, and you will have to prioritize, and you will have to delegate, and you'll have to say no to someone. So for example, being enough for the owners could be I always have to call them as soon as I get the results, answer emails straight away, whatever it is you think. And you might not even have a definition. You just have this underlying uncomfortable, tight feeling in your chest and your stomach that you're not doing enough and you're not being quick enough for the owners. Again, be neutral and be factual about this. So write down, if it's something that's really bothering you, write down, what are you doing right now? What are the expectations the owners have of you? What expectations do you think they have of you, which might not be like what they're actually thinking, and how do you want to deal with it, and how much do you want to give of yourself, how much do you want to do, and evaluate until which degree this is possible. Because it's possible that your brain is irrationally telling you should do all these things, but actually when you look at your calendar and you look at your time, it is not physically possible, in which case telling yourself I'm not doing enough makes no sense, because you could literally not do more in the time you have available to you. So very important in all cases that you have a brain that is telling you you're not doing enough, working enough, being enough, whatever it is, like define that enough for you. Just like I said before, you're not running fast enough. Fast enough for what? To outrun a mountain lion or to break a record? Like what is the enough for? Who is the enough for as well? Like who is it that you think you're trying to show that you're doing enough or being enough, or is it just yourself? And if it's yourself, then you need to set some parameters that would then delimit enough, or you're always going to be chasing. You're always going to be stuck in a wheel running faster and faster, never get there, right? And where does it actually come from, this sense of not being enough? I've been giving that some thought because I just cannot imagine the Flintstones sitting in a cave, gnawing on bones, sitting there thinking, I should be doing more, I should be doing more, I should be doing more, I'm not doing enough. I just can't see it. And if we look at animals, for sure, that is not the case, right? The cat, the dog, they eat, they do whatever, and they just lie down. They're not lying down there thinking and stressing about, I'm not doing enough, I didn't eat enough, I didn't chase enough mice, or the dog, I didn't chase enough balls, I didn't bark enough. They don't think that, right? That's a very human thing to do. And I think it's a very modern human thing to do. And it's just a pressure that has come from, I think, from when we first from the Industrial Revolution came, and we were given these like work hours. We had to work. We have to be like efficient. So humans were turned into a workforce more than anything else, and we had to like work to earn a certain money. And it made sense that the more hours you worked and the harder you worked, the more money you would earn, and that would then guarantee your safety and the security of your family. Having a roof over your house, and having having enough money to eat, and so on, so on. And I think that has just been exacerbated more and more to a point where we just have to be efficient and productive and producing more and having more, and it's always more, right? And I think it's just come with our society, and we have to check in with it, because if not doing enough is I'm not working enough to have a Tesla, an Audi, a Porsche, a yacht, 2 houses, and a flat, is that what you need to have, right? Like, is that the enoughness you're looking for? And then if you want all that, that's great. But I think you want to be really conscious of it. You don't want to be run by your unconscious mind that thinks that you need all these things to be successful. And then, of course, it makes sense that you always have this undercurrent of not doing enough because you're not producing all these things, and you can't show all the others all these amazing things you've bought or purchased because you did enough, quote unquote. And purely within VetMed, doing enough as well, I think, comes from the back from all the way back from vet school, when we had the textbooks, and it was very clear that when a case comes in, then you do X, Y, and Z, and you do these tests, and then you do these treatments, and these are the outcomes. And then you get hit with the real world where we don't have time, there is no money, the animals get brought in too late, whatever. Like, there's so many circumstances that make us not equipped to be able to do what the textbooks used to tell us to do, right? Like, there's just not resources, money, time to do it all. And then our brain is like, you're not doing it as you were taught, so you're not doing enough. And I think for any healthcare worker, anybody taking care of others, there's always going to be a bit of this list, I'm not doing enough. Because if everybody around us are not healthy, happy, and happily throwing the money at us, then there is always going to be this sense of not doing enough because some people are unhappy. I mean, whenever a case ends in death, then in theory, we haven't done enough, right? Because if we had, quote unquote, diagnosed and tested and treated enough, then we should have kept the animal alive. And we know this is not true intellectually, but we can quickly get caught up in it and think that we're not doing enough, and that's why now the animal is suffering or dying, or the owners are suffering because the animal died. Or when we didn't convince the owners enough to do something about this. Now they're taking the animal home. We know it's going to suffer and die because we didn't do enough to convince them to euthanize. But sometimes it's just not possible. Sometimes the owners are not in the right space, or whatever it is. You can't convince people to do something they don't want to do, right? So what I wanted to say with this episode is be really, really careful of that anxiety, stress, and burnout that comes from chronically thinking you're not doing enough. Whatever it is you're doing, whatever it is your goals in life are, your brain is very likely to come at you with not enoughness. And you need to challenge it. You need to see, what is enough, really define it, be neutral, be very factual, and then do an evaluation like I've taught before, what am I doing? What am I not doing? What would I like to be different? Why am I not doing that different? But from a very neutral place. And then see if you want to change anything, depending on what your values in life are, what your definition of success is in the practice, out of the practice, as an entrepreneur, as a parent, as a star kid, whatever it is you are. Just make sure that you're very conscious about it and know that you are the captain of this ship and you decide what enough is, but you need to be very conscious about it. All right, that was all for today. I hope that was helpful for a lot of people. I wish I'd had an episode like this to listen to when I was at my burnout and could have known before that enough is just enough, whatever I decide it is. Take care. Bye.